This week, the lion is embedded on Air Force One as the president travels to Pittsburgh. Is MAGA the new calling card for single men? And is the big, beautiful bill in trouble now that Elon has leveled criticisms? These stories and much more straight ahead on this week's edition of The Lion Week in Review. Welcome into this week's edition of The Lion Week in Review. It's a weekly look at the culture, the courts, your state capitol, and your kids. I'm Chris Stigall. Before we go to our usual panel, we head to Washington, D.C. Our newest correspondent here at The Lion, D.C.-based, her name is Maggie Little, and we welcome her to the show. Maggie, welcome in.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thrilled to have you aboard, and glad to have a D.C. correspondent officially, who, by the way, your first big assignment, and you hop on Air Force One. Pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a really great trip to see everything up close, President.
I'm dying to know, most of us have never been on Air Force One. What is that experience? And as a member of the media, did you learn anything or observe anything that maybe we ought to know?
So it was also my first time aboard. It was essentially President Trump had a press conference in the White House right before it. So we were waiting on the Air Force Base for him to arrive. And he came in by helicopter from the White House. We were there waiting for him to board and saw him along with some of his crew, like Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. And it was just fascinating to be there, especially in the new media seat and seeing the opportunities that we're having under this administration to see things up close because, I was there along with the New York Times, NPR, AP News. And so it was really cool to be part of the travel pool and documenting the president's travels.
Do you see from that perspective, I don't know, I'm sure there's probably not a lot of talking about it, but we're well aware of how mainstream media will frame stories. Did you get a sense or see any sense one way or the other of, I don't know, if you want to call it cynicism or bias, or not really, just kind of all on the day's work for most of these folks?
Probably the latter. I was actually impressed with, there's kind of a sense of like duty that goes along with being in the travel pool. You're one of a select group of reporters. And for instance, when President Trump had his assassination attempt in Butler, it was, the travel pool that was with him that captured all of those photos and all that really breaking news. So you have to realize that whenever the president's in transit, something can happen at any moment. And so there is kind of a sense of duty among the reporters that we have to be just aware at all times of everything that's going on around us.
I also understand you happen to be from Steeler country, or roughly in and around that geographic space. That's where you grew up. So I know, having done a little work in Pennsylvania over the years, how much an announcement of this merger between Nippon Steel and U.S. Steel means to that community. Talk a little about how he was received and how that speech went down last week.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, like you said, Pittsburgh's my hometown, so obviously a little bit of bias there. But just walking into the steel mill, you could just sense the excitement, the energy among people. It was mostly a sea of steel workers. They all had their orange vests and their hard hats on, and there was just a lot of excitement right from the beginning when we first got there. I think also in terms of a more national political perspective, Pittsburgh's really a special place to President Trump. It's kind of considered by a lot of people one of his, kind of ground zero. A lot of his base is there. He has a lot of big fans there. And I think I saw a report saying he's been there at least 9 times since 2024 into that general area. It's obviously close by to Butler where the assassination attempt was. So it's just really a special place to the president. And journalist Selena Zito, who's based in Pittsburgh, was traveling with us. And she was one of the few journalists to correctly predict back in 2016 that President Trump was going to win when a lot of people in D.C. were saying otherwise. And she did that by just traveling these back roads of Pittsburgh and these rural counties. And so I think especially being based in D.C., it's really good to get out there and kind of see a different perspective among these steelworkers.
Pennsylvania continues to be a fascinating place. I know recently Fox conducted a sit-down with John Fetterman and Dave McCormick, one Republican, one Democrat senator, one of only 3 states in the entire country that have one Democrat and one Republican senator. So Pennsylvania remains very, very purple. Is it your sense that it will stay that way in the future?
I don't know the exact stats on it, but that's definitely the sense I get is that it could swing either way. The important thing I think for Pennsylvanians is to feel seen in DC and to feel heard. And I think President Trump has really tapped into that. That was just evident being there on the ground. He referenced Pennsylvania numerous times that we're going to keep steel there. And that really speaks to people to feel like they are being seen and heard by the president of the United States. And so I think that tapping into that has been a great political move on the president's part.
Maggie Little, our new Washington, D.C. based correspondent for The Line. Thanks so much. We turn to our panel here in studio. Back again with Josh Mann, managing editor, Adam Wittenberg, one of our journalists here on staff at The Lion. And Josh, this was a big addition to the staff. Maggie did some outstanding work in her first assignment on Air Force One, no less.
That's right. She's been at it a few months there in D.C., but an experienced young reporter. She's been in D.C. for a while, doing great work. It's nice to have that presence there. So much of what happens that affects families and faith and education around the country actually is happening in D.C. And so to get a chance to have that new media seat on Air Force One has been great. To have a reporter with a White House press pass, we just couldn't be more proud. And, you know, it's in a sense, though, not a surprise because we're a publication that's growing. We have our sights set on being world-class. And so, you know, I hope that our audience will be sure they're subscribed to The Line so they don't miss a single story.
And by the way, not to brag, but our parent organization, Herzog, now officially followed by White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. So that says we're doing something right. I'm just saying. All right. Let's get to the news of the day and the week. The constant storyline, it seems, almost every single week, Josh, is biological males competing against our women and girls in their respective sports.
That's right. And, you know, it can feel like the same story, different location. Sometimes it's the same names. Some of these male athletes who are competing as girls are winning for the second or third time now in their high school career. And so it might ring a bell, but the reason these stories are important is because that a lot of Americans are increasingly expressing opposition to this, and yet we're continuing to see some states allow this to happen. But now girls are more likely to speak out, sometimes even pose in that first place spot on a podium, for example. If they get beat by a male, they might, once the pictures are taken, they'll go ahead and stand up and you know, declare themselves as the true number one. And so it continues to be an important story. And in this particular one, A.B. Hernandez, one of the winners in California, it was interesting that she told some local reporters that she just, because she took second place and not first in high jump, although she won first in another race, she said, well, see, that proves that I don't just dominate the competition. But still, she won second place in state and first in another. Clearly, male biology has an advantage, and so there's no controversy about that. President Trump, for his part, has threatened to fine California because it is not complying with his warning to crack down on what so many see as unfairness.
Yeah, Adam and I do wonder, to Josh's point, I mean, the president has signed some executive orders on the thing and has threatened some state funding, or federal funding to the states, I guess I should say. Some states like California and Maine continue to thumb their nose. What's it going to take? I guess maybe just a full-blown retreat by families that care about this stuff, put their girls and kids into other places that don't allow for it? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there has to be a shift. I think we're gaining critical mass. I think that more of girls are stepping up. It was funny to see California try to sort of soften the blow after Trump threatened to withhold the federal funds. California, our largest state, receives billions, I'm sure, in federal money. And they said, okay, now if any biological males take first place, they'll have to share it. Like we'll put the highest finishing female on the same, first prize podium, so they can be there together. And they're trying to soften the blow. But honestly, when I was reading this headline, I'm going to actually take issue with it. These boys didn't win. They stole or they cheated. It's actually inaccurate to say that a male won women's high jump or women's, 4x400 or anything like that.
And one does wonder at what point parents get engaged here. I don't know why the young girls are the ones that have to be the ones that step up and battle it alone. But anyway, Adam, to another story at readlion.com, an important one as more states continue the momentum. ESA growth, now in New Hampshire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is a great story. It really shows the potential of ESA, education savings accounts, to transform, boost, and grow Christian education. And New Hampshire is a great example. It's the only state in the Northeast United States that has a robust form of school choice. They're actually voting to expand it and fund more students. But just in the 4 years they've had it, 11 of the 28 schools in Christian schools in New Hampshire, it's a small state, have grown by 50% or have started. So school choice launches new schools, increases the size of schools. Parents want it. Most schools want it. It's a boon to educational freedom.
You know, I was just doing an interview with a woman from Cato, and I learned something historically that I didn't know. Maybe you knew this, that 100 years ago this week, I think it was as of this past Sunday, there was a Catholic organization in Oregon that challenged at that time the idea that immigrant children had to go through American state-run schools. And 100 years ago, I think the thinking was altruistic and pure. In order to become a fully ingratiated American citizen, you needed to go through the American school system. And these Catholic sisters challenged that in Supreme Court, and I forget the name of the case, forgive me as we talk. But my point is, 100 years ago, those Catholic sisters won that case. It was really, school choice has been a 100-year fight as of this week. And it turned out those sisters, I think in hindsight, were right, even though 100 years ago, public schools then are different than they are today.
That's right. I think it's Pierce versus Society of Sisters.
You're right.
But you're
Thank
right.
you. Yes.
100-year-old case, and it was so important because it really, the Supreme Court recognized the parental rights, the right of parents to educate their child, to raise them in the way they see fit. And so it's a huge case. And you're also right. School choice has been around a long time in different ways. There was also a Catholic man involved in school choice in the mid-20th century. We've written about him on The Lion. And then in Wisconsin in the early 90s, Wisconsin kind of kicked off a major school choice push. And then later, near the year 2000, around and getting close to the Bush years, we saw DC charter schools and vouchers tried there. And now we see ESAs just booming across the country. And I love the New Hampshire article because it shows something local, it shows something regional, but it also points to this national trend where we're just seeing the appetite is increasing, it's having a good effect, parents like it, and the tax dollars are used more efficiently through these programs. When you give parents choices, create competition, it just seems like it's good all around.
Our Jewish friends are battling mightily here in the United States this growing scourge of anti-Semitism, Adam, and unfortunately it is bubbling up in public school. We've written about this also at readline.com.
Yeah, this is a very sad, very baffling, very disturbing story because residents presented evidence, biased pictures and wording in textbooks or assignments. And really, you ever heard the phrase like slap on the wrist? I mean, the town was like, oh, maybe we need to study that more. I mean, I think they got rid of like one of the most inflammatory images.
This is Bedford, Massachusetts, by the way.
Yeah. But the fact that it was in there in the first place and that this is not immediately met with like horror and disgust, I think unfortunately the tide is turning. I mean, it's been 80 years now since the end of the Second World War and the Holocaust. Unfortunately, I think the tide is shifting and not in a good way.
Fellas, thank you. More of these important stories at readline.com. When we get back, we take a look at some of the news and notes from cable and Capitol Hill when the Lion Week in Review returns. Welcome back to the Lion Week in Review. If you missed any of today's show or you want to go back and review, you'll always find each and every show on our YouTube channel. Hope you'll check it out. And, of course, all the stories at readline.com. Let's dive into some of the sounds and sights from around the week. Guys, we start with this battle that's becoming increasingly uglier since Elon has left the White House. Elon Musk has fired a couple of shots on X and said, I don't like this big, beautiful bill. I think it's ugly. He's threatening to primary Republicans who support it. It's made its way through the House. It's now in the Senate. Big debate rages on what exactly Elon is complaining about, what he's trying to accomplish. The American public who have voted for Donald Trump, do they stand with Elon? Do they stand with Trump? Do they want more from Republicans on Capitol Hill? Here's how the leadership on the Hill, Mike Johnson, who's already passed this out of the House, here's how he responded, followed by John Thune, who's leading in the Senate. You'll hear his response, both of them to Elon and these recent shots.
Yeah, let me say this. It's very disappointing. Okay, I've come to consider Elon a good friend. He's obviously a very intelligent person, and he's done a lot of great work. With all due respect, my friend Elon is terribly wrong about the one big beautiful bill.
We obviously respect everything that Elon did with Doge. On this particular issue, we have a difference of opinion. And I think it's rooted in the fact that he's accepting the CBO assumptions that are built upon a static scoring assessment of the effect, the macroeconomic effect, growth effect, that these changes will have on our economy.
So, the question is, and it's impossible to really know without having read the bill ourselves, Adam, I mean, it's not a perfect bill. It's not beautiful. It's big. It's expensive. It funds a lot of Trump's priorities. It does spend a lot of money. The Republicans would have you believe anyway that it still does a great deal of cutting, but not nearly enough, Elon says. So, I don't know. The public seems a little split based on what I'm reading and hearing, seeing on X. Where do you come down on it?
Yeah, I think that is a lot of the issue. And one of the things that Elon and Trump both have in common is they're businessmen. They're not politicians. And to understand just how difficult it is to cut anything out of the federal government, or almost anything, or to do large-scale cutting, is incredibly difficult. And there are so many political voices and stressors and things. And so this is a common thing, right? People come in, oh, well, why can't they just get rid of that program? Why can't they just cut that? Well, because there's a lot of political ties and pressures and dynamics going on. So I definitely agree there are legitimate criticisms of the bill, but it's also possible that Elon or some of these folks might be looking at it purely from just a regular business perspective and not understanding politics or the reality of government and contracts and things. So there's probably a little more to say and look at here.
Yeah, and again, people aren't really caught up in nomenclature in Washington, D.C., Josh, but the fact of the matter is there are different vehicles to do the cutting. The Doge cuts, for instance, those are done in something separate called rescissions, which the White House has offered up. I guess the people that voted for Donald Trump and support Elon Musk and Doge's efforts, they want to see aggressive cutting. Elon is saying we're not getting aggressive cutting. Do you think Trump and the White House can deliver? Is patience best here? Can you see both sides? I see there's this desire by some, particularly Democrats, to pit Trump versus Elon, but that doesn't seem to be where those guys are going quite yet anyway.
That's right. I think you hit the nail on the head. The left loves this headline and has been all over. It's been the front page for most of these folks because they just see Elon criticizing Trump. But actually, I don't think that's not literally what happened, for one thing. But I think Elon's just putting pressure on senators to make cuts to the bill. And it's at that point where the Senate can do that. I mean, this thing is not close to the finish line. It's with the Senate. They want to get this whole thing done by July 4th so the president can sign it. But we knew all along when it was in the House that they just, from Trump's perspective, just had to get something to the Senate to work with. There's still time to make cuts. It does spend a lot of money. This is politics. You wrangle about how to get things done. I mean, that's what it is. And so there will be concessions made. It won't be a perfect bill. It can't be a perfect bill. So I'm not alarmed by it. I'm not surprised by it. We know where Musk stood all along. I think Trump knew. I don't think anybody's surprised by it. It's just a great leftist headline.
I will, and I hadn't really prepped you guys. I was going to ask you this, but I will just throw in there. It was interesting. Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of the more high-profile House Republicans, confessed that there was a portion of this bill addressing AI, and I'm dumbing it down for the sake of the conversation here, that it effectively says for 10 years only the federal government can regulate AI, states cannot. Marjorie Taylor Greene points out that she didn't read that, and if she had, she would never have voted for the bill, and she hopes it's stripped out because she won't support it when it comes back to the House if it's still in there. But the point in that, Adam, is Marjorie Taylor Greene admitting there was something in this bill she hadn't read. That's a little disturbing to me.
Well, it is disturbing, but it probably also points to her humility and her reality, because I bet if you did an honest assessment, the vast majority of the members of Congress had not read the bulk of the bill. And that's something that, again, I've covered Congress very briefly, but so much of it, it's staffers who read bills. They give the legislator summaries and things like that. I mean, there are some that will read every page of a bill, but these things are mammoth. And so, yes, it's disturbing, but I think the reason she could admit it is because she's humble enough, she's also realistic enough, and she's by no means the only one that didn't read every provision in this bill.
And there are also some that say Elon Musk is so vociferously against this bill because it has taken out some green energy credits and things that directly affect Elon Musk's private sector businesses. Do you think there's anything to that, Josh?
I think that has to be on the table. I mean, I think, I'm generally a fan of smaller government, and so I can appreciate Elon Musk's desire to shrink government. And yet I think it's, you have to look at any person's interests. He's got obviously interests in green energy and subsidizing that industry. Tesla has received a lot of subsidies and a lot of help.
SpaceX with the Defense Department.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so, he has an incentive to be close and chummy with the federal government. But clearly here, it cuts both ways. I mean, he's criticizing what the president wants. And so, it has to be considered.
It's going to be messy, I think, to the finish line. Still lots to unfold, and we will continue to cover it here. Meanwhile, on the other side of the aisle, the Democrats, they're not having an easier go of it by no means, just because the Republicans seem to be at odds. Harry Enton, our friend at CNN, shocked at the numbers for the Democrats.
After all of the waves, Kate Baldwin, after the last few months, the first 5 months of the Donald Trump presidency, right, the first 4 months of the Donald Trump presidency, that you expect that Democrats would have this massive lead on the economy. It ain't so. It ain't so. The party that is closest to your economic views, in November of 2023, it was the Republicans by 11 points. Now it's still within that range, still within that margin of error. Plus 8-point advantage for the Republican Party. How is that possible, Democrats? How is that possible after all the recession fears, after the stock market's been doing all of this, after all the tariffs that Americans are against, and Republicans still hold an 8-point lead on the economy? Are you kidding me?
Now, the amazing thing about his exasperation there, Adam, is I think people wonder, can Republicans continue to enjoy that if they bobble this big, beautiful bill, right? I mean, they've got to deliver something if they're going to maintain that momentum, the Republicans.
Oh, yeah, and I think they will. I do believe, I think I even saw today that the Senate's probably going to release its draft by the end of next week of, the provisions in the bill, and I believe they will. I think there's enough momentum on that. Speaking briefly to what, Harry's saying, like, how can this be that Republicans still have this edge on the economy? Well, part of it is the Democrats haven't offered anything better. They don't have a voice. We've talked about it in previous episodes here. They're not getting out any kind of better messaging. They're not offering any better alternative. All they can do, like we were just talking about, is hope that the Republicans self-divide or implode. But it's not like the Democrats have some better alternative. What, socialism? No, that's not going to work, folks.
I want to turn to Marty Makary, the new FDA chief, on with Margaret Brennan. And in my view, what Margaret Brennan is advocating for here is a top-down, one government edict on the COVID shot for children. Marty Makary not having any of it. Take a listen.
Can you clearly state what the policy is? Because this is confusing.
Yeah, we believe the recommendation should be with the patient and their doctor. So we're going to get away from these blanket recommendations in healthy young Americans because we don't want to see, on the COVID vaccine schedule, we don't want to see kids kicked out of school because a 12-year-old girl is not getting her 5th COVID booster shot. We don't see the data there to support a young healthy child getting a repeat infinite annual COVID vaccine. There's a theory that we should sort of blindly approve the new COVID boosters in young healthy kids every year in perpetuity, and a young girl born today should get 80 COVID mRNA shots or other COVID shots in her average lifespan.
Yeah, Josh, I don't understand the objection here, but Margaret Brennan is making it, and that is, I need you to tell everyone in the country that their children must get XYZ shots. Marty Makary is simply saying, you're the parent, you and your doctor and your child, you make that decision for you, and she just can't handle that.
Yeah, who's manufacturing those shots? I'm sure that they agree with her, but that's the financial part of the equation. But I think it's ridiculous. To me, I think this is downstream now from a fight that we had a couple of years ago where essentially the right and the left divided on this issue, and so she's still coming at it from that perspective. And so I don't think most parents would complain about having, more freedom to choose what's best for their children and, leaving it between them and their doctors.
A couple of cultural issues of note. Caroline Leavitt addressing Pride Month It's June, and that now means Pride Month. It may mean something to other people, but it has largely been dominated by the LGBTQ themed events, parades, and the rainbow flags and whatnot. Caroline Levitt asked about that this week.
Does the president have any plans on making a proclamation, or is it just going to be June this year?
Well, there are no plans for a proclamation for the month of June, but I can tell you this president is very proud to be a president for all Americans, regardless of race, religion, or creed.
Adam, that seems pretty normal.
Yeah, it reminds me of a quote that I actually put in an article where Boise, Idaho, they tried to pass like the gay pride flag as like a city flag so they could still display it, because legislators have made a law you can only put official flags up. And right after they did that, they had to cancel the local pride like kickoff event because of low ticket sales. And someone posted on media, they're like, I was okay with some of these things, or like let people do what they want. But in 2021, the government just started ramming it down our throats. And now I'm really resistant to it. I think what Trump's doing here is a healthy corrective of like, hey, it is America. There's a level of freedom, but I'm not going to push someone's agenda. We're not going to be displaying these flags in the White House. And I think most Americans actually would agree with that.
And finally, is MAGA the new calling card if you're single?
Young conservatives are quickly finding out that they are popular after all, even in deep blue cities like New York. There are apps like Date Right Stuff and groups like Make America Hot Again that are taking on these big blue cities. And 20 and 30-somethings who are right-wingers are finding out they no longer have to be silent about their political beliefs. Some young people actually think that values like patriotism are attractive. Women are willing to be what's called a trad wife over a girl boss, or both, and they're looking for a man who can offer them safety.
It's a brave new world. Don't you think, Kevin?
Just like
I
the good
love
old
this
days.
stuff. Brave new world.
This is just fantastic.
Hi, I'm MAGA.
It's the values from the 50s. They came back. Everything old is new again. Think about that.
But in this day and age, is that for the man to say or for the woman to say?
Hi, I'm
Now
MAGA.
you're getting into gender? Oh, you're getting in trouble right now.
Well, I think both. Some liberal women think it's fascinating if they go for a MAGA man. They just want to have the experience.
Really? Mm-hmm. Also, MAGA man sounds good, right? It's all about la mode. Whoa, 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 whoa. I just think this is great. This is what we should spend the whole hour talking about.
And a lot of men are saying we want to pay for dates.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
They're sick of being emasculated.
Yeah. MAGA men have money, don't they?
Josh, MAGA men, O'Leary said this is the values of the 50s. Is it back?
Yeah, and I wonder really, though, I've got to think that women have even in recent decades, been attracted to men who will provide and care for them, who show some amount of strength. I mean, look at Hollywood. Even with liberal values, we still kind of heroize these certain masculine stereotypes. But I have to say, I'm getting old. I don't understand this sort of like using an app to do this. So I'm just interested. I'm here to learn.
Adam, final thoughts?
Well, yeah, I think that one response to this is that people get canceled or immediately rejected. If you're on a regular dating app, and I'm not single, but I might hear stories like this where you meet someone and you're afraid to tell them your political views because then they might ghost you or like X you out immediately. Or I've seen those postings, and so I can see where people are attracted to this. And I totally agree with Josh that our DNA and the way God made us and society's function for thousands of years probably isn't going to go away despite liberal attempts to redefine it.
Final thoughts from the panel as we wrap up this week's edition of the Lion Week in Review. Next. Welcome back. As we wrap up, we always like to ask the panel some of their closing thoughts. Josh, we start with you.
Well, Forrest Frank, have you heard of him? He's a Christian artist that just hit the Billboard Top 100. We've got an article about him. He was in pop music. Hung up the music career, and then God started to give him songs to sing, and when he started writing them and publishing them, they went viral. And so read more about that at The Lion.
Adam.
Yeah, there's actually some really good political news that school choice states are poised to pick up as many as 11 seats in Congress in 2030 based on current population trends. And the liberal states, those that don't have school choice and are more restrictive, would be losing seats.
Guys, thank you. Great edition of the Lion Week in Review. Be sure to catch it if you missed it each and every week on YouTube, and read each and every day all the biggest news stories at readlion.com. Until next time, thanks for downloading the show.